And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites, Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. An historical, noteworthy, beyond noteworthy, a pivotal historical figure died today, and that's Mikhail Gorbachev. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin? A brave man, I believe.
Very brave. And it's very interesting how he's being viewed because in Russia now, the predominant thought is he was a traitor. This is the storyline that Vladimir Putin, of course, is pushing. Meanwhile, he was the first Russian leader to actually engage with the West in real talks, not just paying lip service, not threats. He worked with Ronald Reagan to end the Cold War. And now, again, Russia is all up in arms. It's like, oh, we shouldn't even honor him. He was a traitor. It's like, no, he was the future. Vladimir Putin has undone all of his good work.
100, Lopkin, you've said some awesome things on this podcast. No one's going to do that one better than you just did. It's true. No, Gorbachev was not a traitor. First of all, he realized the Cold War was unsustainable, especially for the Soviet Union. He was paving, of course there was going to be difficulties, paving the way for future Russian prosperity and a place in the Western world, if you will. And you're right, Putin is the one that screwed that one up. So there you go. Perfect analysis.
And at this point, I mean, it's a good time for people to reflect on Gorbachev moving the Soviet Union away from communism as our own leaders try to push us closer to communism.
Yeah, speaking of one of those leaders, we have and by the way, I think I mentioned in the last podcast, but just real quick, it's stunning, and I suggest our listeners do this. Take you 2 minutes. Go and YouTube the last debate between Trump and Biden, and now go look at a clip of Biden. It's scary that within 18 months he has exponentially declined in terms of cognitively. It's actually shocking. So with that in mind, he's going to give a speech tomorrow, basically lambasting half the country. Your thoughts? And on to that, I think it was yesterday in Pennsylvania, and Fitterman, the gentleman who's running against Oz for the open seat in Pennsylvania, is nowhere to be seen with Biden, but that's another issue. He literally said, if you MAGA people want to take over America, you'll need more than a gun. You'll need an F-15. Is he ready for like a checkup from the neck up or what? That's the president of the United States?
Part of it is, he's an angry old man suffering from dementia. And I know from personal experience with dementia patients, when someone comes down with dementia, when it starts affecting them, it amplifies their personality. So if somebody was a genuinely sweet person, the dementia actually, they stay a sweet person. If they were an angry person, they become angrier. And that's what we're seeing with Biden to a certain extent. The other part of it, though, is that this is the new face of the Democratic Party. And it started with Hillary Clinton referring to people as deplorables. Prior to this, no politician ever insulted the voters. They would insult each other, they would insult their opposition, but they never insulted the voters. And the Democrats, starting with Hillary Clinton with her basket of deplorables, just turned the tables and started attacking the voters. And this is now what the Democrats are doing.
Agreed, but there's a caveat to that. She was running for office. She was someone in the race. This is a sitting president. This is unheard of. Basically telling half the United States, the ones he just screwed over with the college bailout, essentially more of the blue collar element, the people that actually built America, that landed on the beach in Normandy, calling them neo fascists. That is, first of all, he's obviously not in control. I think it's going to backfire politically. First of all, I'd like your insights politically. What does it do politically?
Well,
if he can get through the speech.
Politically, it's going to energize the Republican base the same way Clinton's deplorables comment
But why would he
did.
do that? Because I agree with you. It's not going to do shit for the Democrats because they're already effed in the head about this whole MAGA stuff. It's going to really piss off the people he shouldn't want to piss off. You got to look at okay, go ahead. Sorry.
The problem is politically. Now, I'm not talking about policy here. I'm just talking about politically. The Democrats are rudderless. They have spent so many years saying, oh, well, they're the party of African Americans and they're the party of Hispanics. And African Americans and Hispanics are fleeing the party in droves. And every time they try to do something, it backfires on them. They are literally left almost speechless to the point where now the only idea they've got is, well, we have to lash out.
You know something? You're on a roll today, Lopkin, because that's what happens when you are in control, so to speak. If you're in the game, that's a better euphemism. You can debate, you can discuss. It's like a caged animal. They lash out because it's basically a zero-sum game at that point. It's do or die, and that's where they are, correct?
Exactly. And, I think it's important to point out that right now, the Democrats are trying to make the Republicans into the face of evil, not just because they're Republicans, but because the Democrats themselves are so fractured. They're desperate to find something they can say that will unite their party. And I mean, unfortunately, they're leaning on hatred, which, I mean, even moderate
but it's scary for the American, I'll use civilization, for the American populace. I mean, that's unprecedented. I mean, Nixon in his lowest moment never did. Name a president that actually called half of American Nazis, essentially, fascists.
No, this is the first time that has happened. And it is, to steal Clinton's word, deplorable that they would do this.
It is. But it's also, as you said before, political. It shows that the guy that has done nothing in his life except be in politics, okay? Financially, he was a deadbeat. He was basically in financial trouble. That's another issue for another podcast until his son came along and bailed him out. But he really didn't. So you think at least he would be politically astute, but I assume with the dementia, he doesn't even have that either. I think he's, at this point, let's face it, he's a shell of a person that's just a ploy for powers to be. The people that push the buttons.
He really is. And
he's a robot.
The foreign press has actually picked up on this, where America's liberal press refuses to cover it. They've actually shown footage from conferences. A new one just went up the other day where a foreign reporter, an anchor, is talking about who is really in control of America. And they show the clip where Biden calls upon a reporter and is very quickly cut off. And he says, oh, I tried to take control. I'm not supposed to do that. And a voice from off camera says, well, we have to shut this down. We'll take some questions in private.
Oh no, it has to be brought up in other editions of Carnivore Radio, because this is really something that is deeply disturbing. And like I said, this is not for effect. If you look just 18 months ago, which is not even a blink of an eye, he was cognitively at least 60% more in the game than he is right now. What's going to happen in 6 months? So he's making very rash decisions, or not him, but the people in charge. I think you're 100% with your analysis that basically they're lashing out because it's a rudderless ship, and they are losing once firm constituencies like African Americans, Jewish people, Hispanics. In fact, I saw a documentary on, I believe it was Newsmax, and it's getting out there. In other words, well, we talked about this in terrestrial radio and on this podcast, that if you were going to destroy a group of people, the Great Society and democratic liberalism could not have done it better. If you designed it, you could not have done it better. Am I not correct?
You are correct. And now they're just
But the word's
focusing
getting out,
on
isn't it?
the word is getting out. Whole groups of people are abandoning the party. And that's why right now, policy wise, they're focused on kowtowing to the radical left, because they can't afford to lose them now, because if they stay home in the midterms, the Democrats are lost. So they're coming up with these ridiculous policies like the student loan forgiveness, which, by the way, is never going to happen.
No,
Biden
it's
is go-
unconstitutional.
Right. Biden is going to talk about this and he's going to push this. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to go to the courts. And Nancy Pelosi herself said the executive branch and Biden don't have the ability to do this.
But he knew that when he made this statement. It's all kowtowing, like he said,
Yes.
to the radical left and the squad.
Well, remember, though, he's done this a lot. He did it with mask mandates. He knew he didn't have the power to do it. He did it anyway and was struck down by the courts. He's talking about the student loan forgiveness. He doesn't have the power to do it. That's going to be struck down.
But it's all for show and spectacle. When you have nothing, he can say, "I tried, but the radical court, whatever court that is, led by or put in place by an illegitimate president, thwarted my efforts." Of course, he knows it's not going to go through.
Of course, and
it's a political rallying point.
He'll blame the courts, but the fact of the matter is, unless the administration pushes it through, I don't even think it's going to get to the Supreme Court, because the lower courts are going to slap it down, regardless of who put the judge in, because this is constitutional law 101. Every judge knows the executive branch cannot cancel debt. That's something Congress has to do.
Congress has the power of the purse strings. You knew that in sixth grade. Obviously, I know that Biden's a genius. He taught at UPenn, so he probably skipped sixth and seventh grade, correct, and didn't get that lesson?
Probably. Another big problem, though, is that the schools are focused so on CRT. Most schools, especially at the elementary and junior high school levels, don't even teach how government works anymore. So this younger group of leftist radicals, such as AOC, such as the squad, they don't even know how government works.
No, AOC's perfect. I love it. I can't take credit for this. I forgot who it was, but it was on Fox or Newsmax, said that she loves playing congressperson, but does nothing. It's a big, it's entertainment hour.
She's the least effective congressperson in the entire Congress. She has not gotten a single bill out of committee. She has done nothing for the constituents of her district.
Oh, yes, she has. She chased out Amazon.
Yeah, well, she's done nothing good for the constituents of her district.
Well, anyway, also we are looking at, in terms of I'll say the radicalization of the radical left is almost becoming mainstream. You have, let's see, in Florida, you have Christie, who's running for governor, and also the current governor of New York. Essentially, well, Christie said, if you're vote if you're on the side of the right. Don't vote for me. I don't want you. And the governor of New York literally said, if you're MAGA or have right wing values, leave. Which you shouldn't be
Yeah,
doing because people are leaving in droves anyway.
they're leaving in
It's like
droves
people saying, "Leave
anyway.
my shitty party."
What's
They're
what's
already
really
leaving.
what's really funny about that though is she specifically said move down to Florida. If you take a look at the economies of Florida and New York, Florida is an overwhelming success, and New York is bailing water as it sinks.
Oh yeah, and that's not just focused on New York. You got Illinois, people leaving there. It's basically obviously red versus blue, and which almost leads to a bigger issue. Are we getting to the point we have so little in common the way states are run? And look at, talking about little in common, you have the president of the United States basically telling half the country to F you. I mean, are we really almost getting to the point where we're so divided that we're almost ungovernable? Two separate countries.
You know, what's really frightening about that question is that we asked it 10 years ago. And it's, when we were on terrestrial radio, and the situation has just gotten progressively worse. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm not using progressively ironically. Yes, the progressives have put in place these no cash bail, and crime rates are on the rise, defund the police, these economic policies that are destroying their own cities, and yet they can't stand the idea that successful states are saying no, hey, come here.
No, no. Do you know what it really is like? I agree with you. You're 100% correct. It's you started a business and did well, and Billy Bob, another person, started the same business and screwed it up. Okay, it's hard to deal with the truth. Meaning, for some reason, there's a restaurant, to put in a better example. There's a restaurant next to where I live. Okay, it's thriving. You can't even get a seat. Their predecessor flamed out. It was a disaster. So I always say to my friends, I say, like, okay, if you were the other restaurant and this other restaurant failed, you could look yourself in the mirror and say, bad location, bad economy, whatever, okay? Bad anything, right? But when you know someone else, the next restaurant is lighting it up, you got to look in the mirror and say, I screwed up. I think that's the same thing with blue versus red states. It's hard to look in the mirror with all your Ivy League degrees and graduate diplomas and realize you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, and you've been seeing there was a joke in Babylon B not too long ago saying Texas was going to complete building the border wall using U-Haul trucks that have been coming from California.
I love that.
Because
Nice.
California, and it's not just residents, businesses have been leaving in droves. And all these blue states seem to be doing is doubling down on their failed policies. Now, you
But
are.
doesn't it go? Wait, something. But that's really interesting and good. We need. That's a really big point, Dr. Lopkin. Isn't it what you just said about the overall When you're a caged animal, you don't think strategically. You act basically almost visually. You act instinctively, and I think that's what they're doing too. They're not. They're panicking.
They are. I don't know if I would call it panic. I think it's more anger.
Okay,
It's
I
the
think you're
fact
right.
it's the fact that they have been so wrong so many times, and they refuse to accept that. They believe themselves to be superior to everybody else. So how could they possibly be wrong? And these lowbrow Republicans who won't agree with them and won't let them pass their agenda, how can they be doing so well? So they lash out because they can't accept the fact that their policies were fundamentally flawed. even those that had good intentions, the policy was flawed. It doesn't work. And they can't accept that. So they lash out.
Agreed, but maybe does it also get to a bigger point, something we talked about years ago? I believe you started that in with terrestrial radio when we were on that, before we were unceremoniously dismissed. Um, about all the blue states with the highfalutin degrees, Harvard, Yale, Brown, you name it, right? But more theoretical. And does it go to a bigger point that maybe some of these blue collar values are based in real life, might have more common sense and actual ability to work? I mean, you have Bill Maher, no conservative, on his show literally called College a Scam. There's a book called with that very title by Charlie Hurt, who never went to college. And the title of the book is College is a Scam. And from my own perspective, I remember I have to be honest with you, I was, kind of looked down. I'm not looked down. I thought there was a degree of superiority for someone who went to whatever school they went to. I find that disappearing. I don't think college has the same cachet that it once had. What do both in reality, meaning actually getting things done, and also in terms of people's perception.
Yeah, the perception of college is no longer the prestige image that it once was. uh, Kids are going to community college and then not going on, if they're going to college at all. A lot of kids are going to trade schools. And this is not just colleges. You're also seeing this in the public school system, because since the pandemic, there has been a massive drop in enrollment in public schools. And some kids that can afford it are going to private religious schools because they're getting a better education there. But a lot of kids are being homeschooled now because there is a stigma now almost that the school systems are rigged. It is this giant, I don't want to use the word conspiracy, but collusion, if you will, between the teaching colleges that turn out teachers, the public school system, and the university system, because people are just being brainwashed into, oh, you need more degrees, you need more degrees. And the only ones benefiting from this are the colleges that are charging ridiculous amounts of money to go. And when the students graduate, they find out that the degree isn't worth the paper it's printed on.
Could not argue with that, but I have to ask you the question because it's actually selfish of me because I'm actually very interested in this. Do you agree with me that I'd actually think the whole cachet is not, we're in the college. Like I look at some of these people driving by, and they have, four colleges on the back of their on their back of their window, right? And they're driving a 20-year-old car. I go, well, maybe it didn't all that tuition really might have not worked out so well. The point is, 20, 30 years ago, what college you go, I don't think it's that big of a deal anymore. I think it's like,
No,
what are you doing with your life?
it's not a big deal anymore. And in fact, many businesses have stopped looking for college degrees when they're hiring. Even big tech, especially Apple, Google, Facebook, they've all made announcements that they don't require college diplomas anymore. It used to be, it was very difficult to find a company that would hire you if you didn't have a college diploma. Now it's very common. It's just not required anymore.
I think it would almost be impossible 20 years ago, being from corporate, that if you're, very difficult to get into a corporate, real, managerial position without a college degree. And I saw the people that were in corporate positions that did not have a college degree were always kind of second fiddle, even though their work might have been on par or better than their college peers. But to your point, I almost, if I was in a hiring position in a corporate or business environment, I might actually think it's more of a positive attribute to have a young person who knew how to navigate and strategically position his learning and his life to say, okay, I went 2 years to community college to do, I know, STEM manufacturing, and then I took a course online or a program, a certificate online for communication so I could interface with. I'm thinking, whoa, what the hell do I need a degree in art history?
Exactly. It goes back to an old quote from Mark Twain. I have never let my schooling get in the way of my education.
Good, I love that.
People have to keep learning. But the traditional higher education, even the traditional education models, are starting to fall by the wayside because they have failed us so badly. We used to be number one in math and science and English. Now, if we finish in the top 20, we're lucky.
Actually, it's worse than that. Sorry, Dr. Lod. Sorry to bum you
Yeah.
out. Um, Before Nixon started the Department of Education, we were in the top three, not top four, whatever. We were in the top of the heap. Fast forward 40 slash 40, 50 years later, essentially, we're dead last. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, Zimbabwe, okay, we're ahead of them. Maybe. I'm not so sure, actually. But my point is, there's only 26 industrialized countries, and we're 20. I mean, there's like, let's say, however number of countries. Yeah, but 26 are modern industrial, and we're 26.
Yeah.
We went from
Because
number one, number three,
because
whatever.
the educational system has stopped being about teaching students what they need to survive and to thrive in the real world, and more about turning out drones that are going to push a liberal agenda. And now people, especially during the pandemic, when parents actually were able to hear what the teachers were saying when they were being taught virtually, now there's a huge backlash. And the teachers union is starting to take hits because people have seen, oh, the union is pushing ideas that are not benefiting the kids.
But I think it's the root. You have to go to the root cause, and I really truly believe I know this. It's not the teachers. It's the union. They got way off track of
Yes.
pushing a woke, crazy agenda, and it's also when anything big government touches, it destroys. And when Trump's head of the Department of Education recently came out and said it should be dismantled. I mean, results speak for themselves. You went from the top tier to dead last. Something happened, and it's not the rank and file teachers. It's the union and the Department of Education. They set the standards, and if there are any standards, and it's horrible because the lifeblood of a country depends on the educational level of their society and youth in particular. So, anyways,
I think there's also another group though that needs to take responsibility, and that is the school boards, because they have spent years trying to put a wedge between parents and the educational system. When I was growing up in New York, we had the Parent Teacher Association. Some places called it Parent Teacher Organization. But
yeah.
the key factor was parents and teachers were working together. And then at some point, it became the Parents Association because the teachers were actually encouraged not to participate. And it wasn't the teachers' ideas, this was coming from the administrative level.
Yeah, but there's also demographically in America, the PTO, whatever you want to call it. Back in the day, you had a lot of less mothers in the workforce, higher participation rate. I think that's
Yes.
also a factor. But we'll move on from there. I mean, there's a lot there. But I think my biggest takeaway is, again, being someone that was, let's say, a college snob. and that's completely gone now. Someone says I graduated Excel University. I go, oh, great, awesome. So what are you doing? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Talking about trust in institutions, the FBI, do they have any? Now, being older than you, I grew up. I didn't watch a lot of it, but the FBI with Efren Zimbalist Jr., they could make no mistake, and they were they were incorruptible, right? Well, maybe that's not the case. Public opinion of the Department of Justice and the FBI is dropping like a lead balloon. And you even have Zuckerberg, and he might be in a little bit of a whirlwind because the FBI basically uh, forced him or pressured him, not that he went unwillingly, not to put a clamp on the whole Hunter fiasco. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the FBI has been caught red handed trying to stop the Hunter Biden investigation for political reasons. I'm going to push back, though,
You
on
don't think that's
something you said.
scary?
I think it's terrifying, but I don't think it's new. Because if you really take a look, most people's image of the FBI was the same image that you had. But
Yeah,
that was
Eflin Zimbalist Jr.
right, but that was generated by Hollywood.
Yes.
If you look at the FBI's actual history, the FBI has been politically motivated since J. Edgar Hoover. I mean,
No doubt, spying on Kennedy,
right.
spying on Martin Luther King Jr. Yes, creating
So
dossiers.
they've always been a political organization. The question was who was utilizing them. And at the beginning, it was very clearly J. Edgar Hoover for whatever agenda he had. But the government agencies, the FBI, the NSA, the IRS, were all severely weaponized during the Obama administration.
Yes.
And now we're looking, going, yeah, they have no credibility whatsoever, to the point that they're leaking things to the media just to show, oh, look. And I love the photo that they leaked either this morning or yesterday. These documents all over the floor that have different colored pages in them. And they're going, well, because they have those color pages, we know these were top secret, these were classified documents. Now, what I love about this picture, I mean, first of all, it's very obviously staged. But it's
Oh wait, let me. I need to interject. 1,000% agree. I looked at the same pictures. When I got shit on the floor, it doesn't look like that. Like papers,
right.
like that I'm working on. So it looks nothing like that.
Right. It's very obviously staged. But what's really funny, and most people missed this, I missed it the first time I saw the picture also, but when it was pointed out to me and I started laughing hysterically. In this photo, they show one of the boxes off to the right side filled with stuff they're taking. And you can very clearly see in the box, there is a framed picture of Time magazine naming Trump Man of the Year. It's one of those phony, things you get.
Yeah.
It's like, really? This is what the FBI is claiming is important for them to take. They're taking photographs of magazine covers. It's like, are you kidding me?
It was yes. I like your opinion. That's really critical. I think at first didn't know. It's not just partisan attitude or opinions. I don't see where this is going to work out for the Dems or for Biden or for the midterms. I think if they actually had any there, we might be even knowing about it.
Yeah, I don't think they have anything.
So what happens if it implodes?
Well, I don't think it's an if it implodes. I think it's when. It's going to backfire on the Democrats. It's already backfired in terms of energizing the Republican base and discrediting the DOJ and the FBI. you also, I mean, it also went to discredit Biden because if you remember, Biden said at first, no, he had no knowledge of this. The FBI and DOJ did this on their own. And then, of course, it came out that, yes, of course, he knew about it.
No. Well, he's always been a congenital liar. He
Yes.
lied. He lied. He went to UPenn as a professor. He graduated the bottom of a mediocre law school. You don't become a professor at UPenn because you graduated Carl University and the bottom of your class. Not good.
No, he's a
By the way, it was really Syracuse. But go ahead.
He's a congenital liar. And what's weird is he lies about things he doesn't need to lie about.
No, I think that's great. No, that is so funny. Isn't that the basis of Seinfeld?
Yes. Essentially it is.
Yeah, George, he just has to lies about things he doesn't have to lie. That's Biden too. There's no reason to say you were a professor at UPenn. No one gives a shit. So you weren't. You and the rest of the other world.
Right. I mean, he claimed on one stop when he was giving a speech that he had interviewed at this company, and the company came out and said they have no record of him ever interviewing there. But even this one, it's like if he had said yes, he knew about it, this wouldn't have affected him one way or the other. But he had to lie, and then it comes out and it makes him look worse.
Yes. This wasn't really on the agenda, but speaking of looking worse, what is your opinion that he hasn't done any type of interface, meaning interview, even with the mainstream media or a press conference in over, I think, 7 months?
Yeah, his handlers have been keeping him away from the press, making sure he doesn't take questions.
Do they know that's a nuclear bomb, meaning it's close to the midterms, and just no way are you going to let him next to a microphone? There's actually a video, I don't know if you saw this or if our listeners have seen this, of Jill, Dr. Jill, by the way, Dr. Jill, pulling him away, literally pulling him away on a tarmac away from microphones. It's just shocking.
They are desperately trying to keep him from saying anything. They're writing out his comments. He's allowed to read these comments, but as he himself keeps saying, he's not allowed to call on reporters. He's not allowed to take questions.
But really, probe a little.
He's not allowed.
I'm not going to belabor the point, but yes, not allowed is something that you say when you're a child.
Yes.
Like, you don't say, I'm not allowed. My wife's, no. We're behind our schedule. Don't look like you don't say I'm not allowed.
Right.
You say that when you're 10 years old. Hey, sorry, John. I'm not allowed to play baseball tonight. I got to study. Whoever says I'm not allowed. It's crazy.
It really is. And he repeats it so often that, again, as I said earlier in the podcast, the foreign press is starting to ask who is really in charge of America. This is becoming not just a political issue, it's a global diplomatic issue because foreign leaders are going, we can't deal with him. We don't even know if he's really in charge.
Of course not. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Moving on, we talk about the media a lot. We talk about CNN sometimes in particular, and that the reliable sources, that's precious, is send off, talk about an ego that doesn't really fit accomplishments, but that's another issue. Jewish groups came out, or a couple of Jewish groups in particular, and denounced CNN for their lack of reporting on anti-Semitic issues, and they're heavily leaning against, or they're very much anti-Israeli stance. Interesting. We talk, they're an arm of the Democratic Party. Does that go into your discussion or your premise that you said last week, Dr. Lopkin, that Jewish people are moving away from Democrats as well, denouncing CNN? Doesn't seem like they're too happy to me.
No, they're not happy. And the fact of the matter is, you can't continually spout anti-Semitism. allow anti-Semitic remarks to be said by your membership and expect the Jewish population to continue to support you. It's the same thing with the Hispanic groups, with the African Americans. It's, historically, yes, we sided with you, but you have not done anything for me. Um, there was a television show back in 99, 2000 called Sports Night. And on one episode, they're talking about, how do you decide who to give your money to, in terms of good causes? And the managing editor of the show was played by Robert Guillaume. And they asked his character, well, who do you give your money to? And he said, well, I used to give it to the Democratic Party. And they said, used to? And he goes, well, when you get your heart broken enough times, you learn your lesson.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
this is 2000. This is 22 years ago that people were starting to see the Democrats are not really supporting us.
Well, I think it's beyond that. Being a Jewish American, I believe that they have youthful idiots. In the 1960s, there was no group in America that they thought of more highly than Jewish Americans. Now that they no longer need us, hasta luego, baby. Same with other groups. You just get summarily tossed aside because they have an agenda, and if you're not part of their agenda, we no longer need you.
Exactly.
Check, please.
I mean, the Jewish American population is the largest group of people that are subjected to hate crimes. This is according to the FBI's own statistics. Now, can we believe their statistics? Who knows? We just talked about the fact that they have no credibility. But according to their crime statistics, more hate crimes are committed against Jews than any other group. And yet you have a major faction of the Democratic Party still to this day yelling, defund the police, even as Biden himself is saying, no, we have to fund the police. And the Democrats have not slapped down the squad for their anti-Semitic comments. They have not slapped them down for their anti-Semitic
down. They're
policies.
Encouraging it. You look at Omar said it's all about the Benjamins. If someone said that about an African American group or a Muslim, they would be unceremoniously thrown out of Congress, which she almost did.
So you cannot accept Jews to continue to follow the Democratic Party when you're treating them this badly.
The only Jews that are going to stay in are Jurassic Park members like Blumenthal, Schumer, and the other idiots. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Dr. Lotkin, I thought we had a great show today.
We did.
And we'll be back next week, and people can access us anywhere they access their favorite podcast, which we hope Carnivore Radio is among them, correct?
Absolutely. You can catch every episode of Carnivore Radio as well as the rest of the Xvadio Podcast Network at xvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and any platform that respects freedom of speech.
And does that still include YouTube?
For now, it does. Yes, we are still on YouTube, but
great.
I always look at them with a grain of salt.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lopkin, and thank our listeners. We'll be back next week.
We'll see you then.